Viewer discretion is advised. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. No one expected her to speak. Not like this. Not now. But when Rihanna's name was whispered in court, when her sealed testimony was read aloud, everything changed. People thought she'd walked away, thought she'd escaped. But she hadn't. She'd just waited for the right moment. And now, that moment has arrived. Rihanna didn't just confirm the rumors, she connected the dots. She named the house, she described the list, and she didn't run back to the stage. She walked straight into the fire. Let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing this community connect. Now let's get into it. Why two of the biggest female artists in the world, both connected to Jay-Z, both dominating charts, never shared a track, never stood on the same stage, never released a single photo together. At first, it looked like a rivalry. Then, it looked like tension. But now it looks like survival. Rihanna used to talk about Beyonce with pure admiration. She once called her "my biggest inspiration," said she couldn't speak when they met, said Beyonce gave her advice about performing, how to let go, how to own the stage. But that version of their relationship didn't last. Because when Rihanna got signed to Roc Nation, things started changing. Jay-Z brought her in young, barely 17. And even that first meeting wasn't what it seemed. She said Jay told her there were two ways out of that office. Either through the door with a signed deal, or through the window. They were on the 29th floor. At the time, it sounded like a joke. Now, people are starting to hear it differently. That was 2005. What came next wasn't just music, it was control. Rihanna's fame exploded, but behind the scenes, she was changing. One former assistant said the shift was quiet at first. She stopped smiling at events. She started bringing legal staff to private functions. And then, years later, during the federal trial against Sean "Diddy" Combs, a sealed deposition revealed why. The courtroom went silent when they read her name. Robin Rihanna Fenty. Her statement wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. In a handwritten letter dated March 2009, Rihanna described an after-hours industry party at a private estate in Encino. She said she was invited by someone she trusted, told it was a networking event. But the moment she arrived, she knew something was wrong. A woman in gloves met her at the door. The house smelled like perfume and bleach. There were no cameras, just red lights, silent people, and a clipboard. Rihanna glanced at it and saw her name, third on the list. She hadn't signed anything. That's when a man walked in and said, "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But if you leave now, you don't come back." Rihanna left. She never said whose house it was. She didn't have to. Everyone in that room already knew. It was Diddy's, and what she described matched what multiple other witnesses had already testified to, right down to the lighting, the red room, and the clipboard. But it didn't end there. Because according to another affidavit from her former team member, Rihanna received a message years later. It was a photo of that same clipboard, with her name circled, and one sentence: "Don't rewrite history. You were there. Not until now." But behind the scenes, she started pulling away. And people noticed. Her album ANTI was leaked early, on a platform owned by Beyonce and Jay-Z. She refused to perform at the title press event. She stopped attending certain industry gatherings. And when asked why she wasn't releasing new music, insiders said she didn't want to be handled. That wasn't just about branding. It was about safety. Then came the moment that cracked everything open. On day 9 of Diddy's federal trial, prosecutors introduced a voice memo recorded by Rihanna in 2021. In it, she said, "People think the worst thing that ever happened to me happened in front of cameras, but it didn't. The worst thing was that room, that list, that smell, and knowing I wasn't invited for my voice." She added, "They didn't want me gone. They wanted me rewritten. I refused." The gallery was frozen because that wasn't just testimony. It was evidence. Evidence that someone had tried to recruit Rihanna into something she didn't understand until it was too late, and she wasn't the only one. What does it mean if your name has a star next to it? The stylist didn't know, but later he found an email labeled Assets Star Tier. Rihanna's name was on it. 3 stars. When she canceled her appearance last minute, he didn't ask questions. He already knew why. Now, let's rewind for a second. Because years before this deposition, people were already asking why Rihanna seemed to be avoiding Beyonce. Why the love had turned to distance. And part of that answer came from an unexpected source, rapper DaBaby. In an interview, he described attending a Diddy party in early 2020. He said Diddy cleared the room until only a few people remained. DaBaby, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Diddy himself. He remembered Beyonce approaching him, introducing herself, acting strangely familiar. He said it was flattering, but it didn't feel normal. He said it felt strategic, a coded term for private events where nothing is recorded, but everything is remembered. According to insiders, Beyonce wasn't just attending those events, she was hosting them. And that brings us back to Rihanna. Reports suggest that Beyonce once tried to pull Rihanna into those same parties. That when Rihanna went to her, looking for support during her early issues with Jay-Z, she thought she was speaking to another woman, someone who'd protect her. But instead, she got an invitation, an unspoken one. The kind where saying no isn't just disappointing, it's dangerous. After Rihanna refused, things began unraveling. Her album was delayed, then leaked. Her tour was quietly rescheduled. Her business partners changed. And behind the scenes, something else happened. She was sent a gift box. It included a mirror, a red candle, and a single black velvet glove. No note, just a tag. Would have looked better on you the first time. Her team filed a hotel incident report, but by the time staff arrived, the box was gone. The footage was erased. No one was found. And that's when Rihanna started keeping her distance from everything. From the award shows, from the private jets, from the headlines. She focused on Fenty, on Savage, on skincare. And slowly, she built her own empire, outside of theirs. Because when someone like Rihanna walks away, the system doesn't forgive. It waits, it watches, and it sends reminders. One of those reminders came in the form of a red scarf, left backstage during a Paris shoot. Another came as a phone call, a man's voice, calm, unlisted. "You left early once, don't leave loud." Rihanna never responded. But in a journal entry written 6 days later, she wrote, "If I vanish, it started there. That room, that list, that scent." And now, with Diddy's trial exposing the full extent of what went on behind closed doors, Rihanna isn't silent anymore. She's not naming names in headlines. She's doing something stronger. She's confirming the map. And once you see the layout, once you hear the pattern, you start asking questions about who else was there and why they've stayed so quiet. Because there's one thing the industry never expected, that the girl they tried to rewrite would keep the receipts. And now that they're coming to light, no one is safe. Beyonce's name started trending. Again, not for an album, not for a tour, but for her silence. Because as more women stepped forward, as more court exhibits were introduced, it became harder and harder to believe she didn't know. Especially when her name kept showing up. On guest lists, on leaked rosters, on voice recordings. One name kept surfacing in testimony after testimony. Beyonce Knowles Carter. Not accused of violence, not accused of trafficking, but present. Present in rooms where things went down. Present at Diddy's private gatherings. Present when red lighting signaled something more than ambiance. She wasn't on the sidelines. She was seated in the front row. And for Rihanna, that's where the betrayal began. She once believed Beyonce was a mentor, someone who knew how hard the climb could be for a young black woman in the music industry. But that illusion shattered the night Beyonce allegedly helped host one of those invite-only creative energy resets, a sanitized term used in internal emails to describe Diddy's most secretive parties. According to a former assistant who testified under anonymity, Beyonce's team helped screen guests, and Rihanna's name was on that clipboard, with 3 stars. 1 star means you're a guest, 2 stars means you're talent, 3 stars means you're being watched. That's why Rihanna ran. She didn't want to become one of the girls who didn't leave, one of the girls whose names were whispered in private lawsuits, one of the girls who didn't get out. And here's where it gets worse. Because when Rihanna pulled away, the machine didn't just blacklist her, it tried to break her. Her anti-album leaked on Tidal, a platform owned by Jay-Z. Beyonce dropped Lemonade weeks later, stealing the spotlight. Industry insiders called it a scheduling coincidence. But insiders now say it was sabotage, coordinated, strategic, punishment for saying no. At a Tidal press event that same year, Rihanna and Beyonce were seen on stage together. But if you look at the footage, really look, they never interact. They never exchange a glance. They stand on opposite ends of the room. A source told Naughty Gossip that the entire show was choreographed down to the second, just to keep them apart. It wasn't a reunion, it was damage control. For years, people joked about the time Diddy made a group of young artists walk 4 hours across New York to get him a slice of cheesecake. It was a moment from his reality show, Making the Band. Fans laughed, memed it, turned it into TV history. But recently, Freddie P., one of those artists, came forward and said the cheesecake wasn't even for Diddy. It was for Beyonce. And she was upstairs the whole time. Freddie said Beyonce had asked for cheesecake, and instead of sending someone from her team, she let Diddy humiliate those boys on national television for her snack. And when they finally got back, she didn't apologize, she didn't laugh, she just ate the cake. And that's when people started realizing something. Beyonce wasn't just complicit, she was comfortable. Then there's DaBaby. His interview about being alone in a room with Diddy, Jay-Z, and Beyonce raised questions. At first, it sounded like a flex. Then it started to sound like something else. He described how Beyonce approached him like a stranger, overly familiar, overly warm. And then he said it. It was dope, but different. Because he realized that night wasn't about music. It was about proximity, testing boundaries, seeing who could be brought in next. After that 2009 party, she went quiet. But behind the scenes, the fear never left. According to court documents, she started marking certain days on her tour calendar with red X's. When asked what they meant, her manager said, "They weren't our markings." And that's when it all clicked. Because on one of those red X days in 2016, during anti-tour rehearsals, an unidentified man with a bad boy credential appeared backstage. He wasn't on the schedule. He wasn't staff. But he said something chilling. "You've got a special guest window coming up." Security couldn't ID him. He vanished. But Rihanna knew what it meant. That same day, she changed her lighting cue, canceled the red sequence, replaced it with blue. Because red wasn't just a color, it was a message. In a sealed audio memo from that night, Rihanna said, "Somebody still thinks I'm in the system. I'm not. I left. Why do they keep reminding me of what I walked away from?" And that's the heart of this story. This isn't about an industry beef. It's not about clout or competition. It's about refusal. Refusal to play along. Refusal to submit. Refusal to trade your soul for a seat at the table. Because what Rihanna saw that night, what she refused to participate in, wasn't a party. It was a test, a pipeline, a system designed to break you in, break you down, and keep you close. And if you resist, you're not just blacklisted, you're marked. When the Diddy guest list leaked last year, Beyonce's name was right there, along with Jay-Z, along with Rihanna, along with Justin Bieber, Oprah, Ellen, and even Barack Obama. 156 names, alphabetized, shared online by a conspiracy page, and then quietly erased. But not before the screenshots went viral. And the part that shocked everyone? Some of the names weren't just guests. They were victims. No one's confirming that the list was real, but no one's denying it either. And as more people speak out, people like Jaguar Wright, like Jason Lee, like Cassie Ventura, the pattern gets harder to ignore. They're all telling versions of the same story. Same rooms, same rules, same red lighting, and always the same few faces watching from the top. That's why, when Rihanna filed her sealed deposition, the industry held its breath. Because she didn't just tell her story, she validated theirs. She spoke of voicemails left in the middle of the night, boxes showing up in hotel rooms, emails with no subject lines and hidden threats. She wrote about the time she called another former artist, someone who had disappeared from music, someone who used to be in Diddy's orbit. Rihanna, you were there too, weren't you? Unknown voice. Yes. Rihanna, why didn't you ever say anything? Unknown. Because I didn't leave. And that's the difference. Rihanna did, and they never forgave her for it. She told the court, "I used to think I escaped, but maybe all I did was delay the next girl's turn." And that's why she came forward. Not for fame, not for revenge, but because staying silent wasn't safety anymore. It was surrender. And what about Beyonce? When Piers Morgan interviewed Jaguar Wright, and she mentioned Beyonce by name, made claims about her role in the industry's silence, it wasn't just dismissed. It was erased. Lawyers called, segments were pulled, apologies were issued. And, for a brief moment, it looked like damage control had worked. Because trying to silence the story only made it louder. And that's when Rihanna's own story took center stage. Not through an interview, not through a press conference, but through paper, through exhibits, through the courtroom. She submitted a journal entry, a single page, handwritten, weathered, no date, just 5 words at the top. "If you're reading this..." And then the final line, "I didn't get out untouched. I got out with the door still open for the next girl who needs to run." That's not a confession. That's a legacy. So when people ask why Rihanna and Beyonce never collaborated, why they never stood on the same stage, why their careers, though intertwined, always remained separate, now you know. Because one of them played along, and the other one left the room. There's still a trial ahead. Diddy's lawyers are fighting. Jay-Z and Beyonce remain silent. But Rihanna's voice? It's already echoed through the courtroom. And no matter how many red candles they send, how many gift boxes they drop off, how many contracts they write with gag orders and NDAs, she already told the truth. She didn't have to name names. She just had to show the map, There's no turning back. What do you think Beyonce really knew? And how deep do you think Jay-Z was in all this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every one.